210 years ago, the Battle of Waterloo took place. The Napoleonic Wars came to an end with that battle, which took place in what is now Belgium but was formerly part of the United Kingdom of the Netherlands. Two armies of the 7th Coalition defeated Napoleon Bonaparte's French Imperial Army. One was led by Field Marshal Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington, and comprised units from the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Hanover, Brunswick, and Nassau. The other comprised 3 corps of the Prussian army under Field Marshal Gebhard Leibrecht von Blücher. Concurrently, the conflict was referred to as La Belle Alliance in Prussia, the Beautiful Alliance, named after the La Belle Alliance Inn, and the Battle of Mont Saint-Jean in France, named after the hamlet of Mont Saint-Jean. Many states that had previously opposed Napoleon formed the 7th Coalition to oppose him once more and quickly mobilized their armies when he returned to power in March 1815, the start of the 100 Days. The armies of Wellington and Blücher were cantoned near France's northeastern border. Before they could unite and invade France with other coalition members, Napoleon intended to attack them separately, while a small portion of the French Imperial Army fought the Battle of Quatre Bras to stop the 7th Coalition Army from reinforcing the Prussians. Napoleon's main force successfully attacked the majority of the Prussian army at the Battle of Ligny on June 16th. Wellington then withdrew northward to Waterloo on June 17th in parallel with the Prussians, while the 7th Coalition Army held their ground at Quatre Bras, and the Prussians withdrew from Ligny in good order on the 17th. To prevent the French forces from taking part in Waterloo, Napoleon dispatched a third of his forces to pursue the Prussians. This led to the separate Battle of Wavre with the Prussian rearguard on June 18th to 19th. Wellington decided to offer combat on the Mont Saint-Jean escarpment across the Brussels road, close to the village of Waterloo, after finding out that the Prussian army could assist him. Here he repelled numerous French attacks during the afternoon of June 18th before receiving support from the 50,000 Prussians who were gradually arriving. The Prussians attacked the French flank and caused significant casualties. In the evening, Napoleon used the Imperial Guard senior infantry battalions, his last remaining reserves, to attack the Anglo-Allied line. The French army was defeated when the Anglo-Allied army repelled the Imperial Guard after the Prussians advanced on the French right flank. Napoleon's final battle and the pivotal battle of the Waterloo campaign was Waterloo. After Borodino, it was the second bloodiest one-day battle of the Napoleonic Wars. Wellington described it as the nearest run thing you ever saw in your life during the battle. Napoleon abdicated 4 days later, and coalition forces entered Paris on July 7th. The 100 days of Napoleon's return from exile came to an end with the defeat at Waterloo. It brought the First French Empire to an end and prompted Napoleon's second and final abdication as Emperor of France. It marked a turning point in history between decades of comparatively calm conditions, known as the Pax Britannica, and a string of European wars. In popular culture, the phrase "meeting one's Waterloo" has become an expression for when somebody suffers a catastrophic reversal or undoing. Take James Bond, for instance. Despite its name, the battle took place in the villages of Braine-l'Alleud and Plancenoit on the Mont Saint-Jean ridge, 3 miles south of Waterloo. The Duke of Wellington, who led the victorious forces, established his headquarters in the village, and the dateline he wrote on the official report he sent back to Britain eventually became associated with the battle. This is why the French called the military conflict the Battle of Mont Saint-Jean, but most people around the world, including I, called it the Battle of Waterloo. Bernard Coppens, a Belgian historian and former resident of Waterloo, told the Wall Street Journal, "It is a fact that Napoleon never set foot in Waterloo." Despite being British, the army that the Duke of Wellington led into battle was made up of soldiers from Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. Wellington was of Anglo-Irish descent and was born in Ireland. About half of Wellington's troops were from German states, but there were also a significant number of Dutch and Belgian combatants. More than 50,000 Prussians, led by Marshal Blucher, arrived on the battlefield in the late afternoon, joining Wellington's army and changing the course of the battle. Napoleon returned to Paris after the Battle of Waterloo, where he was compelled to abdicate on June 22, 1815. He took refuge in Rochefort, a seaside city from which he probably planned to sail to the United States, which had recently ended its war with Great Britain. After Napoleon abdicated, one of his relatives wrote to another, "You must have heard of the new misfortune of the Emperor. We will all be joining him when he travels to the United States." However, Rochefort had been blockaded by British ships, and the former emperor did not want to take the chance of being discovered hiding aboard a ship. Napoleon gave himself up to a British warship on July 15, 1815, after his passage to the United States had been blocked. 3 months later, he was banished to the isolated island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, where he spent his last 6 years until he died in 1821. Joseph, the overthrown king of Spain and Napoleon's brother, managed to reach the United States safely from another French port and spent 15 years in New Jersey. Another haven founded by fleeing Bonapartists was the short-lived vine and olive colony in Alabama. The night before the battle, a lot of rain fell on the area surrounding Waterloo. Napoleon's artillery was one of his strongest points, but the French emperor was concerned that his men, horses, and heavy guns would be slowed down by the muddy and wet conditions. Napoleon held off on attacking until noon in the hopes that the ground would dry. The delay would prove costly because it eventually made it possible for Blucher's Prussian army to enter the conflict before Wellington's forces were routed by the French. According to Phil Mason's book, Napoleon's Hemorrhoids and Other Small Events That Changed History, some academics think Napoleon's defeat may have been caused by a painful case of hemorrhoids that he had on the morning of the battle. This illness prevented Napoleon from riding his horse to survey the battlefield as was his custom. The story, according to Waterloo expert Alasdair White, is an absolute myth that Napoleon's supporters made up because they cannot believe that the great man lost, so there must have been something wrong with him, he told the New York Times. Within hours of the battle's conclusion, locals started removing the front teeth from tens of thousands of dead soldiers who were lying on the battlefield using pliers, tiny hammers, and chisels. The looters sold the stolen teeth to dentists who made dentures because there was a high demand for human teeth. The National Army Museum in England claims that English dentists promoted dentures as Waterloo teeth, or Waterloo ivory, doing nothing to hide their sources. The teeth of fallen soldiers, still known as Waterloo teeth, were being imported by English dentists at a healthy profit even at the time of the Civil War. The French territory was reduced by the peace treaty signed in November 1815 between France and the European powers, which also mandated that the defeated nation pay a massive indemnity over a 5-year period. According to Royal Engineers Museum, Parliament gave the Duke of Wellington 200,000 British pounds, or 15 million British pounds today, in appreciation of his service. Those who are French, British, German, Belgian, Dutch, or any other nationality from Europe, we will never forget this battle as long as we keep learning and teaching about this in future generations to come. You may have seen my post today, but 80 years ago today, we lost a brilliant man in Okinawa. His name was Lieutenant General Simon Bolivar Buckner Jr. He was 58 at the time of the battle, and he was killed by enemy artillery. That's all I have for today. If you like what you hear, leave a comment down below and subscribe. This is Stephen Luke, and I'll see you next time for another update on history.